Hello friends, and welcome to The Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, the title for this week's video is The Winnowing. And if you saw the thumbnail for this video, you would have seen a picture of a winnowing fan, I think from Korea. And winnowing is when farmers, after they've harvested grains like rice or wheat or barley, would use something like this traditionally to separate the grain from the chaff. And so what they would do is they would put a bunch of stuff inside of the basket and then toss it up. And the lighter chaff would blow away in the wind and the heavier grain would fall back into the basket, along with some of the chaff. So in a repeated motion of tossing and catching and tossing and catching, the chaff would eventually blow away and the heavier grain, most of it, would remain in the basket. So, what does that have to do with living an intentional life? Well, as usual, as every week, I have laid a tarot spread, including oracle cards, to dive into a topic related to living intentionally. And the overarching theme for this week seemed to be harvest and winnowing. So, let's take a look at the spread. You can see that this week, just as last week and the week before, I'm using the same set of cards. The Child of the Universe Oracle in the center, and my inquiry cards to ask questions of that spread, and then the True Black Tarot to answer those questions. And if you're curious about the creators of the deck, there will be information at the end of the video about the creators, and there will be links below the video if you want to go purchase these decks yourself. So, we've got the beautiful, beautiful sets of oracle and tarot cards laid out. And let's take a look at the first set of 6 cards together, briefly, before we break those down. The central 6 cards of this spread are again from the Child of the Universe Oracle. And you can see that the 3 of the 6 are related to the lunar cycle. Now the lunar cycle, which for me begins at the new moon, the dark moon, the moon where there is no light reflected from the sun, so we can't really see it in the sky, which moves through the waxing crescent to the first quarter, to the waxing gibbous, to the full moon, and then to the waning gibbous, the second quarter, the waning crescent, and then again to the new moon. Yeah, the lunar cycle. And the 3 cards in this spread related to the lunar cycle are related most closely to the full moon. Now, in fact, there is one of them, the full moon card. And then we have the waning gibbous, which is just past the full moon. And then we have the eclipse. A lunar eclipse only happens during a full moon. So all 3 of these cards are related to the full moon, they're very closely related. And so there's a lot of lunar energy in this spread. And for those who work with lunar cycles, who follow the lunar cycle and see that the new moon is a time when intentions are set, where things are begun, seeds are planted, intentional seeds are planted. And then we move to the full moon, where we start to harvest those, where we realize our intentions. So this is the time of harvest in this spread. The time of harvest and moving past the harvest. So friends, let's look at the first line of these oracles, the top line of the Child of the Universe oracles. The top row of the 6 central cards of this spread is where we are placing our attention, where our focus is going as we are living an intentional life. And the first card of this row is perhaps where we get the overarching theme of this spread. And that card is the waning gibbous. The waning gibbous, just past the full moon. The full moon where our intentions have flourished, have blossomed, have grown. And now it's time to harvest. And have you ever noticed that when you have harvested your intentions, when you've gotten the new job, when you started the new relationship, when you have bought the new car, perhaps, along with all of that excitement and all of the good things that you were expecting, there were also some things that you were not expecting or things that are not exactly what you wanted. And that is wonderful. That is beautiful. Living in a physical universe, that is part of the game. It's part of living an intentional life. Because when you received your intention, if everything about it was absolutely perfect and you did not want anything else and you didn't want anything to change, the only logical conclusion would be stagnation and death. Instead, we have things that we delightfully do not want, which allows us to make a new choice, to redirect the flow of our intention, to create new things, to create the next step, the new thing, the thing that is our next step of evolution. That's part of living an intentional life and part of the beauty of the evolution of this physical universe. So the waxing gibbous is harvest, yes, but it's also winnowing, where we look at what we have taken in. We look at it and we realize that, yes, there is so much here that I really want. And yes, there are so many things here that I didn't want and I don't want. And I'm allowing them to be carried away by the wind. I'm allowing myself to direct my attention away from those. I'll focus on the things that I want to remain and also the next step of my creation. I will toss my grains in the air. I will let that chaff blow away. And I will look at my grains and I will say, yes. So what will I do with the harvest? What remains of the harvest? When I have let what's not serving me go, and I look at all this beautiful grain in my winnowing basket and I think, okay, what will I do? Then it's time to share. Then it's time to portion out. Well, portion out. We don't want to make, okay, I'll give this much to you and I'll give this much to you. No, we want to share generously. We don't want to hoard all of our stuff, whether that stuff be actual things like cars and cash, or that stuff be our relationships, or that stuff be our creations, our artistic creations. We don't want to hoard that stuff. That's limitedness. That's living in fear, and that's not living intentionally. An intentional life is a life of generosity and sharing. So we look at the symbolic grain that we have harvested, and we share. We share that around, and we reflect. We reflect on the process that got us here and got us all this wonderful grain and that chaff. We reflect on that. And we realign, because we realize that as we were tossing that grain in the air and letting all that chaff blow away, we have gotten a little bit out of alignment. We have lost our balance ever so slightly. And the waning gibbous is the time to realign. And from all of that energy of gathering in the harvest and tossing it up, it's time to realign and to rectify our intentions. Because as we realize that we have also gained chaff along with our grain, we realize that we may want to redirect our intention a little bit. We may want to shift the next creation. We may want to shift the decisions we have made, because we can do that. We can do that. In fact, that is part of the joy of living an intentional life, is being able to redirect and make new decisions along our path. Once we have laid the path, we are not bound and determined to follow that path come hell or high water because we made the decision. Living intentionally is a life of flexibility and allowing ourselves to redirect our intention slightly or to a greater degree, but to flow in a new direction, to new creations, to evolution. Because our evolution is not a direct line, it's a shifting line that moves us in one direction and then another, this way and then that way. That's evolution. And that's the waning gibbous. That is the waning gibbous. And then the next card you can see is the magic wand. And the magic wand is the realization that among all of that grain that we have harvested, some of that grain we will distribute, we will share with others. Some of it we will use for ourselves as they are, the house, the car, the job. And some of that grain we will use as the seeds for the next cycle of growth. That's what that magic wand is, to realize that, okay, we've harvested, we have separated the chaff, and we have our harvest, and it's time to start selecting or realizing or discovering the seeds for the next cycle of growth, of expansion, of evolution. However, we also want to realize that this is a process. Selecting the grain doesn't mean that it is going to manifest immediately. Thank all of the gods that are on our side. Thank God, thank Gaia, thank Brahman, thank higher self, whatever you want to call that. This gap of time is delicious, so we can enjoy what we have and anticipate what is coming. We want to nurture those seeds. Before we actually plant them, we want to give them our attention, give them our energy, give them our discrimination. Not all of those seeds we may want to plant right away because they might be overwhelming to plant all of them at one time. We may want to be discerning about which seeds we'll choose. And remember that it's not just the selection, it's loving that seed into growth. And the first step of that is, before we actually plant it, is to give it our attention, to nourish and nurture that seed before we actually plant it. We want to also allow ourselves to follow inspired action. If we feel inspired to plant, sure, that's wonderful. But we don't want to plant because we think that, well, we've got the seed, we got to plant it. We want to allow time. And again, if you feel inspired to plant. If you feel inspired to let it grow, it's the time. But we don't want to rush it. We don't want to hurry it, because evolution that is hurried will die, will disintegrate. A butterfly that we try to hurry into its new stage of development will die if it's not ready to burst from its cocoon on its own. We may need time to achieve the expression of this new seed, which is exactly what that next card is. Divine timing. All of this is in divine timing. We want to be patient and trust that these kernels, these opportunities will manifest in the right time. We want to let them germinate with patience and with love and with attention. We want to give them attention through all the stages of their development. We also want to remember that we are co-creators of this harvest. We are not doing any of this on our own. We are co-creating with the divine, whatever you want to call that. We are co-creating with ourselves. Yeah, there are our eternal selves and our physically centered selves. and various degrees of selfhood between that. There's no clear line between, okay, this is my physical self, this is my eternal self, and there's like a wall between them. That's not how this universe works. It's a gradient. Yeah, there's the part of us that is most conscious here in these bodies, and there's a part of us that is most conscious everywhere in this universe, and that is all a unity, a spectrum of consciousness. And we are co-creators with ourselves. And we are also co-creators with other physically focused human beings and other creatures in this universe. So, what do we want to remember? As we remember that there is divine timing, we also want to remember that each of us has free will. Each of us has our own free will to create as each of us chooses. And there are times when we do come together to co-create beautifully. And there are times when my free will and your free will are not in perfect sync, and that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm not here to control your free will. You're not here to control my free will. That's why it's free will. And we want to allow each other to evolve through each other's powerful current of intention. And when those currents line up and we are co-creating, that's beautiful. And when they separate and we're going in parallel or different directions, that is beautiful too. We don't want to force or try to force others to match our timeline. When it's time for us to come together and co-create, that is the divine timing. We want to practice patience and new perspectives. That is the card of divine timing. So for this row, what do we have? We have the waning gibbous, which is harvest and reflection, separating the chaff from the grain. Taking some of that grain, sharing it, and taking some of it and nurturing it for the next cycle. And allowing the time that it will take for that new cycle to actually begin. For those roots to actually begin growing. For the sprout to actually sprout from the seed. Friends, let's look at the bottom row of this 6-card section. The bottom 3 cards of this 6-card section is the base, the foundation of this spread, if you will, where we are standing on, what we are standing on. And you can see that the central card of this line of 3 is Aries, the first side of the zodiac, and the fiery sign, the active sign. And flanking Aries are 2 expressions of the full moon. We have the full moon on one side, and on the other side, the eclipse, which is the full moon, but hidden. The light is blocked, but it's there. It's there. It's still there, and it's still powerful. So the question is, how are we going to use the power of the full moon as our base? Because again, we're moving from the full moon into the waning gibbous in the row above. But we are still standing on the base of the full moon, all of that energy of the harvest. So what are we going to do with that power? And I think this card is directing us to direct that power inside. Now, as we have separated the chaff from the grain in the winnowing of the gibbous, the waning gibbous, we also want to direct some of that energy inside to examine what chaff we have internalized. Because as we have developed and as we have evolved and as we have grown all of this magnificent life that we have grown so far, there has been some chaff that has been internalized. And we want to direct the light, the power of the full moon internally, so that we direct our awareness inside to discover where our channels have been blocked and to clear those channels. Because it's only with clear channels that we are able to flow freely with the powerful current of intention. We want to direct the power of the full moon inside as well, for our own awareness, for the growth of our own awareness and for our personal development. We want to direct that light, that power inside to keep our pathways open. Not all of them are blocked, but we need to give them attention to keep them open. And again, it's open pathways that allow us to flow with the current of intention. We want to clear our energetic and emotional space. And when we look at the questions which are answered by tarot, that topic will come back up again. It will be reconfirmed. We want to clear our emotional space because as we have grown so much, as we have created so much, there has been some emotional debris that we've also collected, and we want to let that go. And the eclipse is the energy to allow us the space to do that. On the other side of Aries, we have the full moon in all of its glory. The bright, shining, energetic, powerful full moon. And this one is reminding us to also bask in the glory of the full moon. We've gotten there. We've gotten there and we've created so much and we can allow ourselves to bask in it. We don't always have to be working 24/7 at clearing away things and getting rid of the chaff. We can bask in the energy and the power that we have available to us. Always. Always. Not just when the actual moon is in its fullness and cycle. It's always there. The power is always there. We want to use that energy for our own transformation and our realization of self. So as we bask in the energy, we are naturally able to absorb that energy and naturally transform, naturally realize our selfhood. We want to let it stimulate and nurture us and our relationships. The full moon gives us so much energy, just like the harvest gave us so much to share. The full moon gives us the energy to share with others. And the full moon allows us to do that. So, the eclipse turns some of the energy inside for us to clear our pathways. The full moon in all of its glory, we can bask in it, we can transform, and we can share. We can share who we are and also what we've discovered. We can share our progress. We can share our transformation. We can share us as newly evolved beings because we are always evolving. And that card in the center is a little bit of a warning. A little bit of a pay attention card, Aries. Because with all of this power, we can sometimes use it in a less than helpful way. There is never a wrong way. We never get it wrong because we never get it done. We're always learning. We're always growing from our experiences. So, sometimes with all of that energy, we want to take charge. We want to be the Aries. We want to conquer challenges. And that can be fun. That can be wonderful. But it can also be contrary to the flow of our intention. Yeah, sure. We want to face challenges. We want to encounter challenges and grow from them, to surmount them, to move beyond them, to encompass and grow with those challenges. But if we face a challenge from the standpoint of the warrior attacking, that is contrary to the flow of intention. We don't want to attack our challenges in a confrontational way. We want to face them, to explore them, and to grow beyond them. And when we get into that Aries frame mindset of attack and challenge, in the sense of charging and destroying, then we have gone to the dark side. We've gone to the resistant side of Aries. Aries can also be the challenger of growth and of creation and of developing structures and stability and new explorations. But the dark side of Aries is the warrior, and when we turn into that warrior, we're resisting. We're resisting the challenge instead of engulfing, encompassing, and growing from the challenge. Sometimes we use that energy to act first and think later. And again, if we are acting with the enthusiasm of inspiration, that's great, that's wonderful. If we are acting with the enthusiasm of inspiration, that is wonderful. That is growth. That is flowing with the current of intention. But sometimes we are acting for the sake of acting. So, if we are going from inspired action, acting because we cannot not act, that is wonderful. We're doing exactly what we want to do, and we're flowing with intention. If we are acting because we cannot not act, we are flowing with intention. If we are acting because we cannot not act, then we are resisting. There is a difference. There is a difference. If we cannot not act because there's something within us that is just needs to be expressed, because we are inspired, we cannot not let it out. That is acting with intention and inspiration, and it's a beautiful evolution. If we are acting because we're afraid of not acting, if we see this potential time of non-action in front of us and we say, I can't do that. I cannot not act. I gotta do something. Whatever it is, I gotta do something. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever felt this empty space and thought, I've gotta do something. I gotta do something. That is not acting from inspiration. That is acting because you cannot not act. And that is not living intentionally. So, we want to be able to discriminate between acting because we cannot not act. It's just bubbling up from within us. It has to be expressed. Or because we're resisting not acting. Because of fear, of inertia perhaps, fear of not directing this energy to something out there. When that energy might just need to be directed back in. We might just want to direct that energy inside to do the clearing, to do the transformation work from within, so that it energizes us from within, and we get that inspiration that we cannot not act upon. So Aries has a light side and a dark side. And we want to be very careful which side of Aries we're following. And that's what this space is telling us, reminding us that we are on this powerful source of energy, surrounded, engulfed by this powerful source of energy, which is intention. And how are we going to act with that? Are we going to allow those times when we want to have the seed nurtured, nourished for its germination? Are we going to allow ourselves to express what wants to be expressed? Are we going to allow ourselves to not act when that is the time, when it's time to not act? Is this confusing? Have I tucked myself into a whirlwind of action and non-action? Basically, just quickly, in a nutshell, we've got all this power, and we want to use it in the most intentional way. And when we allow it to fill us and clear out our channels and open us up to the beautiful and powerful flow of intention, we're going well. And then we will naturally act because there is nothing else we can possibly do. Or are we going to feel this energy and say, I gotta do something, and turn to the dark side of Aries? That's what we want to avoid, if we can. So friends, we've got 4 questions around this central section. Let's turn to the first question, which is a very good and interesting question. The first question we're going to ask is, where is movement needed? And the answer to this question is the 3 of Cups. Remember, I mentioned that we're sharing our harvest, that we are co-creating in divine timing. That is the 3 of Cups. The 3 of Cups is collaboration. It's our social, emotional network, if you will. It's the people that we co-create with, or the beings that we co-create with, whether they are humans in human bodies, or beings in other bodies, or non-physical beings. It's all of that together, the community that we co-create with. So we need perhaps sometimes at this time of harvest, as we share, we want to make sure that we are giving movement to our community. We want to celebrate together, celebrate the harvest when we are having a harvest, a jubilee, express our merriment. We want to give movement to our friendships with joy and creativity. Because again, it's that network of people which we are co-creating this universe with. That is the creativity of our networks, of our social interactions, of our emotional interactions. The 3 of Cups is reminding us to give some attention and some energy to our emotional and social connections, to use them, not to use them, to be with them and co-create with them and celebrate with them and be joyful in our co-creation together. So at that time of harvest, we want to celebrate how far we've come and perhaps do a little bit of envisioning of where we're going to go, together and as individuals. The emotional joy is also there. We want to give movement to that emotion. Allow that emotion to spread around to all of those we interact with. The 3 of Cups. Let's look at the next question. This next question is, what am I willing to change? And the answer to this question is another cup. It's another cup card, and it's the 5 of Cups. The 5 of Cups is the card of regret and disappointment. And so, what am I wanting to change? What am I willing to change? Remember, the waning gibbous is the time of winnowing, the chaff. The chaff is the material that symbolizes our disappointments, our regrets, perhaps. We want to allow that to flow past us, to be carried away by the wind, if we can. But to do that, we want to give attention to it. We can't just let it sit there in our basket and say, go away, disappear. We want to give attention to it. We want to give air to it so that it can naturally flow past our experience. So what are some of those things we want to allow to pass us by? We want to move forward and through. Again, regret, disappointment. In our creations, as we create all of the wonderful things we want to create, what have you created recently? Think about it. What have you created recently? And what in that creation has been slightly, if not greatly, disappointing? Along with the beauty and the wonderful points, the wonderful aspects of that creation. What were the less than wonderful aspects? What were the things that you might have regretted about that creation? Or maybe some things you might have had to have let go of for that creation to come into your experience. What are some of those things? Have you ever felt a little bit of pessimism after the honeymoon period of the creation? That is something that we may need to give attention to letting go of and turn towards optimism. We may want to look at the mourning process. Some of the things that we create also bring us mourning. Some of the most beautiful things that we create also have a side of mourning to them. Because they weren't exactly what we thought they would be, because they are taking the place of other things, there is often a side of mourning to our creations. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Because it's that shadow side which allows us to make new creations, make new choices for the future. There may be times when, as we have brought in our harvest, we see that not everything has grown to expectation, and we may feel a little bit of failure around that. And remember, there is no failure. You never get it wrong. As one of my favorite teachers, Abraham Hicks, says, you never get it wrong because you never get it done. The only failure is stopping living. The only failure is stagnation, not moving with your intention. And even that's not really failure, because you're going to move with intention one way or the other. You may have to leave this physical body to do it, but you're going to do it one way or the other. There is no ultimate failure. There are only things that we can learn from and then move past. So, what are you willing to change? What am I willing to change? Are we willing to reevaluate what we are considering a failure and take it as a learning, as a time of realization and understanding and enlightenment? Are we going to allow ourselves to realize that this is our potential moment of enlightenment? Am I willing to change my attitudes toward the sadness that seems to be surrounding some of my creations? Am I willing to let go and let myself flow with my current of intention? Am I willing to let those shattered cups in the Five of Cups flow past me as I bring my harvested, intact, and beautiful aspects with me to my new harvest in the future? Am I willing to flow past all of that and evolve and grow and allow? That's the answer of the Five of Cups. Let's look at the next question. The next question is, what do I want to happen? And the answer is always the Ace of Coins, the Ace of Pentacles, the Ace of Discs. And you can see in this card we have one glowing disc coin with two axes below and mounds of what looks to be gold. New opportunities, manifestation, abundance, new abundance, the beginnings of abundance. We want to remember that all aces are the seeds. They're the beginnings. And that's what we want. When we've harvested, when we've brought in our harvest and we have winnowed it out, we always want to have those next seeds ready for the next cycle of planting and harvesting. And that's what we want to happen. We want to have our Ace of Pentacles moment after our harvest. That's natural. That's wonderful. And as we recognize that, as we allow ourselves to recognize which seeds are our new potential, are our new opportunities, our new seeds of abundance, our new seeds of manifestation, that we want to give them patience and attention and nourishment. We want to feed those seeds. And that's the reminder of the Ace of Discs, of Pentacles, that we want those seeds, and so we want to nourish them. We want to allow them to develop naturally. Let's look at the next set of cards. The last question is, how can I express myself? And the answer is both startling and beautiful. It's the Moon card. And in the Moon card, this is another water-based card, right? We had 2 cups in the first 2 questions, the 3 of Cups, the 5 of Cups. And here in the Moon, we have another water element, another emotional element, another perhaps unconscious element. This is the card of intuition, the card of reflection. So, how can I express myself? I can look within. I can look within to the contents of my unconscious, of my emotions, of my intuition, and allow myself to express those. After I have manifested in the real world, I can allow myself to manifest myself in the Moon card. I can allow the contents of my unconscious to rise into consciousness so that I get new realizations and allow myself to express those realizations in a state of allowing, in a safe environment. We want to allow ourselves in a safe environment to express ourselves naturally. Some of us, when we see some of our unconscious, our hidden, our shadow elements, want to take them like a club and go beat people with them. We want to use them as a weapon because we know that somebody out there has caused us to have these, some of them negative and some of them positive, but some of these negative feelings and some of these negative experiences, some of these things that we don't want to own for ourselves, we also want to give responsibility to others for our having these contents. And so we pick them up when we realize we have them, we wield them as a club, and we go after these people. Look at what I have because of you. And that's not what the moon is trying to tell us to do. That is not the way we want to express ourselves in the moon card. We want to find a safe environment, recognizing that we have divine presence, divine guidance, divine love showering us at every moment. And we look into our interior pool, our inner castle, our ocean of unconscious. We look into the waters to see what's down there. And when we find things, when we find contents, we can raise them up or allow them to come up and look at them. And when we feel safe, express them. Share them with those we love, with those we trust. Mindfully. We want to express ourselves mindfully. So how can I express myself? I can express myself most fully when I am self-reflective, when I am looking within, in a safe place, with people I love and can share with, openly, allowing it to flow naturally. So, as we are in our harvest and winnowing time, as we are clearing out the contents in the external world and our internal world, we'll notice that there are some things we want to let go of. And when we're in a safe environment, we may want to express those things. As we also share the bounty of our harvest. We want to be open enough to express ourselves fully. Have you allowed yourself to do that? It's not an easy thing to do, because it requires love, trust, and the positive sense of vulnerability. Not so much vulnerability to attack, but willingness to open ourselves and be naked, emotionally and spiritually and psychically. Be naked in front of those we love. And if we can achieve that in love, and hopefully eventually in joy, then we know that we are truly, powerfully flowing with the current of our intention, because we are purely open. And that is enlightenment, isn't it? That is enlightenment, allowing that light to permeate us so fully. Friends, thank you for coming with me this far. This is a spread that has been a little bit challenging for me, frankly. And I hope it's made sense to you. I'd love to hear what you think. Has any of this made sense to you? And how has it made sense to you? What has that sparked within you? I'd love to hear in the comments below. I'd love to hear you. I'd love for you to hit the like button if you feel inspired, and share this with anyone who you think might be inspired or helped by it. And hit the alarm bell so that you can get notifications when I upload videos, if you haven't already. And truly, I would love to hear from you in the comments below. In just a moment, the information about the decks will be arriving. Is it from that side? I think it might be from that side. And now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.